Hi guys, I wanted to try something new with this video or this format style where it's almost like a personal essay, but once again, I'm not using any kind of notes aside from this, which is from Supernatural on Wikipedia. I'm geeking out because I can't believe I didn't use this to assist my viewing experience, but I was able to watch it like a normal person, and I'm grateful. So when it comes to rewatching at some point this fall, I will definitely be using this as a guide to help facilitate any journaling and writing that will come up for the show. And I finished watching it at like 4 in the morning. I had so many thoughts, and I reached out to a couple of people today to discuss some, I don't know if you want to call it like, also I love that I get to use my laptop while I'm recording this. This is so exciting. I feel a little bit like Sam Winchester, so this feels like such a, like a way to pay my respects. And I don't want to spoil anything, but I guess, yeah. There were so many revelations that I had during the watching experience, and so I think what I really would like to discuss in an informal format like this, before I write a personal essay that I want to post on Substack, is that I wanted to discuss how crucial being open and willing and patient and to have faith and how important love is. And we try to avoid grief and pain and suffering, and it's in that avoidance where we usually experience it even worse than had we just been transparent in the beginning. And I feel like the reoccurring theme throughout the series was that we're following almost exclusively male protagonists, and they were all my comfort characters. I loved everybody on this show. I don't think there were really any characters that I particularly disliked, but they were just so likable, and there were contrasting personalities that somehow just meshed together and then redefined what family means and what it looks like. They're pushing the envelope about what is family. They are reminding us that, you know, within the masculine and feminine energies that we all carry inside of ourselves, there's this embodiment of shame that I think the boys really, and I feel silly saying boys, but the whole spiels, they always say hello boys, like the villains whenever they see him, so we'll call them boys. But when we see the boys feel their emotions, it's rare for them to feel it without some element of shame or guilt, and then it becomes this even bigger emotion that had they sat with it and confronted it by themselves and with each other, then it wouldn't have snowballed into what it is. And so I wanted to discuss that here because this was so necessary for me to sit with as someone that was dealing with so much grief. And, you know, on the outside, you look at my situation, you look at my life is good, it's beautiful, it is. I'm grateful. I have everybody that I could ask for in my life, and I can't be sad. But even that feeling of invalidating my own grief for what I'm sad about, for my losses, that's rooted in shame. It's shame because I'm comparing, but I only know what it's like to be myself. And you can empathize, you can sympathize, you can just, you know, you could be a lending ear to someone who's going through a different kind of suffering, but you will never know what it's like to be them and to fully experience life as who they are. And I have all of these theories that I love to discuss about collective consciousness and like the egg theory and everything like that, or reincarnation. But ultimately, in this lifetime, I will only know what it's like to be me, Noelle, and that's it. Which returns back to this idea of why I think it's so important to use this channel as a reminder for myself and for whoever's watching, and most likely future Noelle, that I have to be the topic of interest for myself every single day. I need to challenge my brain and sharpen it and honor my body and really focus on my spirituality and my faith And this show did exactly that for me. So before I get into why this was so meaningful, and I might have to pause it at one point too, just to create kind of a separation about what I wanted to discuss. But for me, besides the obvious, well, no, okay, I guess we'll just kind of create like a little timeline here, an invisible timeline. So to start off, one of the most important points of this show was the storytelling element. Every single season, there was this incredible plot, and then there'd be these subplots, and then subplots for the subplots, and each character had immense development, and even that development included regressing as a character, which is necessary and very human. Each character who is considered a hero has done some evil things. So it has you sitting with the idea of good and evil. And as you progress throughout the show, you discover that the, religious concept behind good and evil is not only, just like I don't want to say, it's not a fable. What is the word I'm looking for? Like a theme, but it ends up being the entire show. It ends up being everything. It's not, you realize it's not so black and white over time. And it reminds me of Walking Dead in that way, The Walking Dead. But between watching Sam talk about his idea of purity and like this biblical cleansing, and Dean's fear of disappointing people and being the bad guy and having to torture people, and just seeing how they both have this good and evil story arc where they flip-flop back and forth, take turns, but then there's this duality between them. And seeing how they handle grief throughout the series is so profound. And what I think my greatest takeaway, and why I loved this show so much outside of the storytelling, was that it really showed men what healthy masculinity looks like. And they did it in such a graceful way, and messy, but with that mess comes the grace that you should give people. And then because this show revolved around religion, not halfway through, but more or less, where it does become this focal point, and you recognize that the humanness inside of every character, whether they were an angel, a demon, or some other bigger things that I don't want to spoil, I think that, or even the concept of death as this entity. There was something at the very end, one of the characters that I won't spoil, who's kind of like the beginning of the world part of it, says that you wouldn't really be able to understand us if you didn't see us in these vessels. And that Sam and Dean couldn't quite grasp that they're not just, measly people before them. They are presenting in a way so that they see them as human. But they're so much bigger than that. And I loved how the show did that the demons possessed people and that the angels had to receive permission to have a human as their vessel to present themselves. And I think because we only know what it's like to be human and to experience life through human eyes and to be made in the image of God, it makes sense that everyone would appear human. And I think at the end of the day, with storytelling, it all comes down to the humanness of it all, not just the show, but we want this grand story. And that's what this show revolves around, is this great, unexpected story. We want the plot twist of the century, of a lifetime, and God wants that in this show. I love this series for so many reasons, and the storytelling was what initially piqued my interest, and I couldn't believe how, you see these flawed humans and you want to keep listening, and you listen to these characters' stories that you only know in 1 or 2 episodes. And I was told by someone that I thought I loved I did in my own way, but I was told that they didn't like the way I told stories, and if I ever just stopped and asked myself what was the point. And that was a negative person, a cynical person who didn't like themselves and who had too much insecurity than they knew what to do with. And so I've prayed for them many times, and I hope that they've healed. And when watching the show, I think that I projected a lot of these ideas. I was putting people in boxes. Again, this idea of, oh, one angel, oh, he's a warlock, he's a demon, whatever. And that's not how it is. And by the end of the show, I was able to reflect on the way that I've been boxing and generalizing, and how that was only hurting myself. And yeah, it was really necessary to just look at these characters that I've admired, that have become these emotional crutches of some sort, and how I still look at them as heroes. And it's because they're so human. Their characters are so believable, and you see a little bit of yourself in everyone. And the show has reminded me to give people grace, and to keep trying and pushing, and that storytelling is part of life. And if people don't like the way that I tell stories, there will be someone that does. But I like the way that I tell stories. And I was so quiet for a while, I silenced myself. I judged myself through the lens of someone else that I wouldn't want to swap places with. And so this show helped me with that in the beginning. And as time went on, and I liked it just for the sake of its enjoyment, and that it inspired me creatively again, that I had all of these ideas that I wanted to talk about and write about, and just the idea of storytelling and adventure and the fighting and everything, and then the emotional involvement. It was so beautiful. I fell in love with storytelling, but it really was so immersive, and it was hard to have a favorite. But I think outside of the storytelling, God talked to me through the show, and I was raised Catholic, and I went down a very spiritual path since like 2018, I'd say. And I started to go down that rabbit hole when I adopted Angus, my bunny. And I remember that veganism and going cruelty-free were the start of my spiritual journey. And towards the end, when Ang was really sick, I remember I kept feeling pulled to God, like very pulled to God. And then I was angry. I think we've all been there, where you cry and scream and you think, why are you doing this to me? And I felt like I couldn't catch a break. I felt like every time I was so close, and there's a moment where Dean says that in the show that I had to pause and just sit with. It took me back. Like every time, think we're getting somewhere, think we finally have done it, something else happens. And to see his break, this breakdown from that experience, was something I really felt deeply. I was at such a loss, and I felt all the anger I have tried to suppress throughout the years, because anger is not productive. And in some ways it is. I look at how they incorporated the story of Abel and Cain and Abel. Interesting to say the names in a different format. That was one of my favorite parts of the series, and one of my favorite parts of the Bible. And I've sat with that quite a lot. I have the book East of Eden. I'm really excited for the series coming out on Netflix about that. But yeah, I think seeing how this show that I had no idea was about God and angels and demons and faith and everything, seeing how this idea of like you have no faith, and seeing Sam pray to angels, seeing Dean not believe in it, but always having an angel some way, in some form, whether it's a street light. I've seen people talk about that. There's always an angel on his shoulder in a way, and that was Castiel. and my favorite character. And seeing them choose kindness despite it all, to show up and be better people for other people, and to sacrifice themselves, to see that that love is sacrifice. And I want to pull up something from the Bible before I read these. This is a very different layout than I anticipated with this video, and I can't do the series justice. I can't. I don't know where to go with this. There's so much I could talk about. But I want to read this part from the Bible. So let's go. Okay. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. And I'm tearing up as I read it. And the show did exactly that. And by the end, they showed that that was, I love love. Love is at the root of everything we do. Even the lack of it is from love. And just seeing that they showed men who seem so avoidant with love and who had these bad experiences with romantic love show up and experience it. Like, this is so crazy. But to know that they loved exactly like this, that they loved each other, and they loved this self-made family, and that they treated everybody that came in their circle in this way. But they were still human. You know, just because this is what love is, it doesn't mean that being a little jealous or, love as a concept, love as a choice is exactly this. But I also think that love is as easy as breathing. I think love is the most basic, fundamental energy at our core, that we are all made from love. And I've said this before, like on my, maybe not in a video, but to people I know, where I'm like, well, I was an anniversary baby. I was literally created out of love. And I think that's why I feel so enamored by love and passionate about it. And that just seeing it displayed in such a real, raw, authentic way through the series was so beautiful. And I think that's why it was so meaningful to hear these two scenes that I want to read. So all I'll say is Sam and Dean, despite fighting, arguing, bickering, they loved each other exactly that way. And it was so, so beautifully done. But there's a scene that I want to read here. So just pretend this is a transition. I've told you why. The storytelling, the way that they display human emotions, the grief, all of it, right? Just what it's like to be human, to lust, to be gluttonous, to be full of pride, wrath, you name it. They've done it all. So, and yet they are heroes. And so there is this scene with Castiel, my favorite character, who is my comfort character, who I just absolutely adored. I felt like, until they introduced him in season 4, Sam and Dean were wonderful. They were a delight. I absolutely loved the show as it was, but I was so excited knowing I've seen clips of this character, and I thought, oh, he might become a favorite, or it might be a little tough on him. I'm not sure. And I remember, my mom lost her phone. Okay, that's gonna have to wait a minute. Basically, I remember when Castiel was introduced in the episode Lazarus Rising, and oh my gosh, guys, I know everybody loves that episode. What's not to love about it? But watching the way that this character fell for humanity, it felt like this experience I've had inside of myself that I've felt so intense, that I've felt alone in this deep love and longing. And then I put on this human front. I'm inconvenienced by mundane and like minuscule experiences. Like I'll be annoyed if someone doesn't greet me back, or someone's a little rude to me at the register, or I'm not feeling good, or whatever. It's life. You get stuck in traffic, or someone says something rude about you. It's human. Of course I fall into it because I'm human. We're all human. But at my core, what I have felt and have struggled to downsize is this deep love. And I think this helped me sit with my existentialism, which is something I have thought about every single day since I was maybe 7 with my OCD. I've thought about death. It's become a hyperfixation of mine like my entire life. But just as much as death is, life is. Being alive, being in love with everything that life has to offer me. And I think that when I have fallen for people romantically, if they're not able to see the world in a similar light, or feel intimidated by it, feel like I'm putting the weight of the world on their shoulders. And that's not what it is. It's that suddenly this vessel, this soul and mind and body and everything that makes life what it is in human form, all of this stuff is just meshed together and presented in front of me. And I am made out of the same materials and energy and ideas, and I'm presented in front of them. And then there's just this thing, this spark, and it's life, and it's connection, and it's love and curiosity and creation, and it's everything that I think defines what life is and what life encapsulates and what it's meant for, why we're here. Suddenly it's as simple as it's this. And I think the most beautiful thing you can do is to grow alongside someone. And I think because I become so inspired and excited and wrapped up in this, I have chosen, I don't want to say the wrong people because I still agree with why those things needed to play out the way they did. I hope that I had changed those people in the ways they changed me. But I chose people that couldn't offer me the same love. And yet I still loved them. And that is what hurt me. And all of this to say that this is why this show meant so much to me. So I'm going to read you this scene. Castiel's passing. Don't mind me if I read this a little theatrically, but we got to get you into the story. So Castiel is sacrificing himself for Dean, his human that he raised from perdition out of hell. So, all right, we'll read a couple lines above. Oh, geez, I'll probably cry. Castiel talks about how he is willing to risk his life right now. So the price was my life. When I experienced a moment of true happiness, the empty would be summoned, and it would take me forever. Dean says, "Why are you telling me this now?" So Castiel, while tearing up, says, "I always wondered, ever since I took that burden, that curse, I wondered what could it be? What my true happiness could even look like. I never found an answer because the one thing I want, it's something I know I can't have. But I think I know. I think I know now. Happiness isn't in the having. It's in just being. It's in just saying it." Dean says, "What are you talking about, man?" Castiel says, I know how you see yourself, Dean. You see yourself the same way your enemies see you. You're destructive, and you're angry, and you're broken. You're daddy's blunt instrument. And you think that hate and anger, that's what drives you. That's who you are. It's not. And everyone who knows you sees it. Everything you have ever done, the good and the bad, you have done for love. You raised your little brother for love. You fought for this whole world for love. This is who you are. You're the most caring man on earth. You are the most selfless, loving human being I will ever know. You know, ever since we met, ever since I pulled you out of hell, knowing you has changed me. Because you cared. I cared. I cared about you. I cared about Sam. I cared about Jack. I cared about the whole world because of you. You changed me, Dean. Dean says, why does this sound like a goodbye? And Castiel says, because it is. And then he says, I love you. And that's it. And Dean doesn't say it back. He says, don't do this, Cass. And Castiel is sacrificed. And this belief I've always had, seeing the way that my dad loves, seeing how Jesus sacrificed himself, that love is sacrifice. And to see this in this show validated these intense emotions I've had. And something I've talked about with one of my friends recently, this is probably the most vulnerable video I'll ever make, but something I've talked to one of my really dear friends about this year is that you can't expect you from other people. And I don't expect it. I think we use these buzzwords about love languages and attachment styles and personality styles and whatever. We use all of these labels to box us in, to create excuses. We discuss compatibility, and it's like we've shut off feeling. We have tried to intellectualize our way out of everything and to be logical instead of just letting yourself feel. And so what this meant so much to me, why, was because I don't expect the way that I love to be the way that I'm loved back. I do it for the sake of doing it. I can't help it. I can't shut it off. And I have felt like for so long I've had to condense it, to downplay how much I feel. And this show did so much justice to that. I can't believe I'm making a video to cry for like 25 minutes and more. But here we are. And so to have that be through my comfort character, it felt so full circle to realize that this instinct, this pull, and like inclination towards absolutely adoring this character for 11 seasons of him being on the show was just so beautiful and special. And the writing of this character just meant the world to me, to not feel so alone. And to feel like, you know, the whole spiel with him is that he isn't human. And he's borrowing a human's body, Jimmy Novak, and then God reassembles him one day and, you know, Jimmy goes to heaven and whatever. Not whatever, but for those of you who don't watch it and are watching this for some reason. But Castiel doesn't know how to move through the world like a human because he's not. And so he's so in awe and fascinated by Dean. And to see how much he loves this man's soul was everything to me. To see the way that he wanted to learn and study Dean and to see the world through his eyes, like that is what love is. And to see everything he was willing to do because he believed in Dean and whatever Dean believed in, whatever choices he made, you know, and it really was everything to me. So there's that. I'm gonna read this one too. This is a scene. So yeah. Okay, so I don't want to give too many spoilers. One of the characters who I've absolutely adored, who has such an innocence about him, and he's full of joy and every complex human emotion, while struggling to understand the human part of himself, ends up becoming God. And Dean is talking about bringing him back to their bunker and stuff, and he said, I'm not coming back home. In a way, I'm already there. Dean said, where? And Jack goes, everywhere. Sam says, so you are him. Jack says, I'm me, but I know what you mean. Sam says, what if we want to see you, you know, or have a beer or whatever? Jack goes, I'm around. I'll be in every drop of falling rain, every speck of dust that the wind blows, and in the sand, in the rocks, in the sea. Dean goes, "It's a hell of a time to bail. You got a lot of people counting on you, people with questions. They're gonna need answers." And Jack says, "And those answers will be in each of them. Maybe not today, but someday. People don't need to pray to me or to sacrifice to me. They just need to know that I'm already a part of them and to trust in that. I won't be hands-on," said the previous character of God, put himself in the story. That was his mistake. But I learned from you and my mother and Castiel that when people have to be their best, they can be. And that's what to believe in. Well, I'm really as close as this. Goodbye." And Sam says, "See you, Jack." And wow. And so I was crying, happy tears, and I was so overwhelmed because it felt like the way that I love God and the way that I experience the world and how much I love being alive. And I think that you have to experience the pain of being alive, the grief, the OCD that has felt like a possession, the grief that comes with wanting to know what it's like to think like a normal person, the pain of wanting to socially fit in and not knowing how to do it, to overthink everything from your body language and the way that you look at people, like your own eye contact, and to study the micro expressions and gestures and all. It's so exhausting. And so I understood these characters that I loved so much. I can't believe I'm crying so much, guys. This is so crazy. And I had my period like a week and a half ago, so like full transparency, this is how much I love. This is why I've been so excited. And there's one more thing I want to pull up. Let me just, 1 second. Okay, and finally, so this is from season 6, episode 20. I can't tell you how much I loved this. I think it was season 6, or is it season 5? Nope, 20. Okay. From 2011. This is crazy. There is a beautiful monologue that Castiel acts. And I'll read that to you guys, and then I'll be done here. So you can see the puffiness of my crying. Castiel says, "You know, I've been here for a very long time, and I remember many things. I remember being at a shoreline, watching a little gray fish heave itself up on the beach, and an older brother saying, 'Don't step on that fish, Castiel. Big plans for that fish.' I remember the Tower of Babel, all 37 feet of it, which I suppose was impressive at the time. And when it fell, they howled divine wrath. But come on, dry dung can only be stacked so high. I remember Cain and Abel, David and Goliath, Sodom and Gomorrah. I can never say their names, I'm really butchering this. And of course, I remember the most remarkable event. Remarkable because it never came to pass. It was averted by 2 boys, an old drunk and a fallen angel, the grand story. And we ripped up the ending and the rules and destiny, leaving nothing but freedom and choice, which is all well and good, except, well, what if I've made the wrong choice? How am I supposed to know? I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you my story. Let me tell you everything." So what he was implying was that Archangel Michael and Lucifer are supposed to fight to the death. The show prevents that. And I just absolutely adored the way that this was told. I felt like, again, there were just so many layers to this show, and so every time I appreciated something, it became even deeper, and there was even more. And I'm going to end up just playing around on this Supernatural wiki, and I can't wait. There's apparently a discussion section. I'm really excited for this random page. We'll do that. Okay. Season 8, episode 8. Wow. Summarizes it, discusses things in it. This is really cool. Wow. And then of course the entire script. I'm gonna have so much fun with that later. But anyway, I'm going to Supernatural Comic-Con tomorrow, and I wanted to make this before meeting Misha because I wanted to just create something as authentic as I could. And I don't think that I could explain how much I love this show to people And then I watched those last few episodes, and I think the show ended exactly how it should have. It was so perfectly done. And I'm just really grateful for it. And I hope that something that someone else creates can move you in this kind of way. I hope that the way that I've loved and healed through this show, and how much it's inspired me, how much it's restored in me, how much it has confirmed that the way that I feel is okay. That is everything to me. I don't need to tone down who I am and how I love and how I think. That I get to just be. And the people in your life can tell you that. And it's just when you get to see it every day like this in like such a creative... This biggest wing. I couldn't even have done that if I tried. That's actually kind of cool. Anyway. But I think a couple of you have been lucky enough to know the way that I love, but even then, there was probably a lot of reluctance on my end. And a lot of the people that I love and care about platonically, who have advised me to tone it down and, guard my heart. And I do guard my heart. But I'm so grateful that I get to feel as deeply as I do. And it's not to say that other people don't. It's just I don't ever want to come from shame. And I don't want fear to hinder the way that I feel. And being a coward is so... it's like everything that I have been feeling for the past year. Why I stayed away from dating and connecting with people on a deeper level. Why I just stayed safe in my mind and in all of my creations and outlets and hobbies. It's like I keep people at an arm's length, and I want to challenge that. And this show helped me with that. That you don't know what tomorrow brings, but I know you can't wait until tomorrow to love someone. You can't, and I've been seeing that line online a lot, and it's not even said in the show, but it's implied, that you might not even have tomorrow. In the death of so many of these characters, when they have a moment in their final breath, saying like they didn't know that was how they were going to go. There's an entire concept in this show about death and everyone having a book about the ways that they'll die. And even then, even when being presented with that, they didn't know that was the way that they were going to go. And it's the truth. We don't know. We don't know. People can change their mind. Like, life circumstances change things, and people might not love as deeply as you do. And that's the risk, that's the gamble of this. But you aren't fully living life as it's intended to be lived if you do not open yourself up for love. Love means taking the greatest risk, and it does fracture your ego, and it does impact the way that you live for the rest of your life if you fully, properly loved and allowed yourself to be. If you let love in, if you open up to that. This is something I've talked about in so many of these videos, but wow, has this show shown it. I think back to with Dean and Lisa, and he tells Sam at one point, like, don't ever bring up Lisa and Ben again, Lisa's son, because he couldn't even allow himself to think about them ever again. And then you see how he doesn't open himself up for love again. And we see different layers. We see different depths of love that Sam has experienced. He definitely was more open to love. And I adore his character. I adore all of them, but I wanted Dean to have a break. And it crushed me that Sam always almost had it, and then it was pulled away. But he was a romantic, an intellectual, loved to read, loved to research, was very healthy. Oh, he was like a lot of my other part of my comfort character. And then Dean, and his way to feel his feelings and just go with what his gut's telling him and to fight. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And also the way that he would geek out and just, man, all of them. But yeah, just seeing how they've all processed falling in love and being in love and the grief that came with that, because we don't know what's next. But when you allow yourself to love, you're telling someone it's okay if you change me. And I don't know why we're so afraid of that. And I think if there's anything that this show has taught me besides everything I've mentioned, the last thing that I want to say is that when you resist love, when you're afraid of it, you're not protecting yourself. You're protecting your ego. You're protecting the life you think you have. And you're holding yourself back from the life that you deserve, from the love that you deserve, from the connection you're meant to feel. Because even though we come into this world alone, we leave alone, and some of those, like myself, we want to spend a lot of alone time. But in doing so, you're really missing out. You're meant to love. And that's why every culture and religion, they all have these stories about love. And whether it's the way that when we hug, the way that our bodies align, or how we're supposedly from Adam's rib, the creation stories and all of these romantic but devastating monster series and shows, it's all pointing to something bigger, that we all feel incomplete. And I think that's where this community and family and romantic love all are vital to being. Like, you can't be you without others. And so I'm really grateful for the show. I'm really grateful that it woke me up from a year of grief. And I hope that this inspired somebody to tell someone they love them. I hope this inspires you to open the door for somebody, like the door to your heart, your mind, and your soul. And yeah, this might seem so silly to people. I'm even kind of judging myself knowing I'm going to post this and be crying about this show. And I'm so excited for tomorrow. And you guys can imagine, I'm crying like this. I am like, oh no, I'm kind of dreading meeting Misha because I don't want to cry to this man. I want to take a nice photo with him and just be like, thank you. You've helped change my life. If you ever run across this YouTube video by some chance, cool, great. But yeah, I think some people might be like, no, go outside and live a little, touch grass. Believe me, I have been. And I just kind of felt alone in touching it. Kind of felt like it's just been me out here. And yet everyone has attempted to connect with me. And it's like, I was just like, I was in my own world and not seeing it for what it is. And it's because I was protecting my heart, but I was running from it. So yeah, I hope that all of you let yourselves love, because if you're not, you're just pushing away what's meant for you. We're meant to be changed and challenged, and things are not supposed to go the way that we plan them to. And true freedom is in loving. So there you have it. Thank you to those of you who watched this. That's crazy. And yeah, all right, carry on.